Hi everyone. Today I'd like to walk you through the configurations required prior to completing your first expense batch. During your onboarding, our experts will walk you through each of these steps. First, in ConnectWise PSA, we want to check our member mapping. So in ConnectWise, we navigate to System, Members, and the employee's first name and last name are combined into the display name in QuickBooks Online, and the vendor number is mapped to the customer field. Please note, if you are running payroll, your employee's first or last name must be different than their employee record in QuickBooks Online. Normally, you can get around this by adding the letter V in their vendor number, or by adding their middle initial to their first or last name in their member profile, depending on how you have your Mobius set up. Typically, I prefer to add the middle initial to their first or last name within their QuickBooks Online payroll identity. Next, we want to check our accounting package setup tables. So we go to System, Setup Tables. We search for the accounting package in the general ledger category. And we want to make sure this transfer expenses as bill is not enabled. Not to worry, we will configure this in Mobius a little bit later in this video. Next, we want to navigate to our billing setup tables. So we can go right back to System Setup Tables, type in Billing, and it's this first one in the invoicing category. Select your company. We want to scroll down a little bit to the invoicing defaults for service tickets and for projects. The bill unapproved time and expense records should be discussed internally prior to making any changes. This will require time and expense entries to be approved prior to being invoicing. Unfortunately, you will not be able to turn this on only for expenses. Please note that if you require expense reports to be approved prior to reimbursement to your employees, this is going to be an important consideration, as all unapproved billable expenses to clients will be batched over to QuickBooks Online regardless of approval status if this is enabled. Next, we want to navigate to our GL setup tables. So we go back to our setup tables. We type in GL, and under the general ledger category, we select GL accounts. Here we want to make sure that we have 4 main account types configured. The first is the expense offset. This records non-reimbursable expenses logged in your instance of Manage. ConnectWise requires this link to be linked to a credit card or bank account type in your accounting package and will be used when your expenses are not paid by the employee, for example, by company credit card. The next one is the expense internal. The expense internal records expense entries against your company and should be attached to the expense account type in your accounting package. The internal company is set on the My Company screen under the Owners tab. So to get to that, you go to System, My Company. Under the Owners tab, the Global Billing Options has your internal company. You want to make sure that this is the company that you have set up for yourself. The next one we want to go and review is our expense external. We'll go back to our GL account setup table. And make sure that our expense externals are set. These record expenses entered against a company that are separate from your internal company that we have previously went through. It should be attached to an expense account in your accounting package. And the last one we want to review is revenue expenses. And this records all revenue generated from expenses to a client that is not covered by an agreement. It should be attached to an income account in your accounting package. Finally, in Mobius, we want to navigate to our company name. And then we want to select the Purchases tab. And there are two settings in here that we want to review. Enter reimbursable expenses as bills. This is enabled. If enabled, reimbursable expenses will be added as expense bills, and non-reimbursable expenses will be added as expense purchases as a GL item in QuickBooks Online. Please note that batching non-reimbursable expenses requires the expense as bill option to be disabled in ConnectWise Manage Accounting Package Setup Tables. The second option here is the Sync Unapproved Expenses. By default, unposted unapproved expenses in ConnectWise PSA will not be batched over into QuickBooks Online. Please enable this option if you do allow billing unapproved expense records in Manage. We also want unapproved expenses to batch over into QuickBooks Online. This is where you would set that. Once you've configured this correctly, select Save, and you should be ready to perform your first expense batch.